All right, well, welcome back to the Workplace Safety Show. Once again, Jay Smith here along with Darren Llewellyn, and been a while since our last talk, actually. A lot of travel going on.
We got lazy.
Some of us been stranded on the East Coast in snowstorms, but
I drove to Mississippi.
okay, you can have that. You can have that. Warmer climates next week, though. Warmer climates.
Yes.
Anyway, we're going to get back into a few topics here that we normally cover. A couple things we're going to discuss today is mitigation. Removing hazards, not just sticking a sticker on and calling it a day, but something I know real near and dear to your heart here.
Yeah.
As far as discussing mitigation.
Yeah. It's the reason you should be doing an arc flash assessment. The goal of an arc flash hazard assessment can't be labels. It just cannot be labels. That cannot be your only goal. The goal is not to put labels on the equipment and then wear FR clothing. The goal is to find out where all your hazards are, which ones need mitigation, lower those hazards if possible, and most of them can be lowered, not all of them, but most of them can be lowered, and then wear the PPE required then. Don't ever let your arc flash analysis be sold to you or done as, hey, it's labels. It's all about labels. It's not about labels at all. It's about the mitigating the hazards.
Now, is that going to cost more, though? I mean, that's,
In some cases, it could cost more. That is down the road when you do the mitigating, if you have to replace some piece of equipment. But upfront cost to us, or for your money to us, or your arc flash analysis company, shouldn't be any change at all, because no one should be doing arc flash assessments without mitigation recommendations. We won't do it. If you call us and say, hey, will you do us an arc flash assessment without these recommendations, we'll say call someone else. That's not right. We won't do that. A lot of companies do arc flash assessments. Some consulting firms do it and will not provide you with recommendations. And yeah, they can do it cheaper. So if you get a cheap price, make sure that's not what they've cut out in order to make your price attractive, because it's wrong. I mean, it's why you're doing the assessment. It's not about labels.
Yeah, and punching a button in a software system, I mean, that really doesn't require much, engineering or electrical knowledge of how how a power system study should go, how the systems work, how they're coordinated. In our case, that's where our PEs and double E's actually earn their money.
Right.
I mean, I hate to say that anyone can do an arc flash analysis, but I mean, come on, you put data in, you punch a button, you get some results out. And
Right.
Unfortunately, that's what a lot of people are pushing, as an arc flash assessment. And a lot of times this mitigation, removing these hazards is very easy.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times, it's something as simple as turning a dial on an instantaneous trip setting on a breaker.
Yeah, about one of our engineers, David Cho, does a study, consistent study, runs all the time, where he looks at the data we've collected for all the facilities, and we're looking at 200,000 pieces of electrical equipment. We did like 350 different studies last year, so there's a lot of studies he's looking at. And in general, in most facilities, this is not true for everybody, but generally speaking, about 80% of the equipment in a facility is not going to need any recommendation or mitigation. It's already a zero, about 80%. So the equipment that's not zero might need some, or will receive from us, if we're doing it, mitigation recommendations. 80% of those recommendations are things like adjust a circuit breaker, trip setting, or change a fuse. Those things are not, certainly adjusting a circuit breaker costs next to nothing.
Right.
And fuses aren't terribly expensive when you're dealing with safety. And about 20% of the recommendations you'll receive will be more difficult. They might require asking the boss for some money or something, things like replacing a large circuit breaker and main switch gear, or replacing a panel, something like that. Those do require more money and more time, but do the easy ones first, which are most.
Yeah, and you can prioritize, some of those more expensive. Once, a lot of times what we hear is, once they actually sit down and look at what we've recommended, somebody in the back will say, well, it's been 7 years since we've even been in there. I mean, it's not something that we have to, frequently maintain. So those are areas where you can prioritize. Get the easy ones done first, and then move on from there. It's a lot of a lot of people really struggle with, why are we making these recommendations? Why are you doing this? Oh, this is just so, people can sell us more fuses and breakers or maintenance or testing or whatever. And that's truly not the case. It's,
No.
we now know what causes these hazards, and we now know how we can prevent them.
Right, right.
And not all fixes are going to work. We have clients that we make a fix and we take a spacesuit down to a nothing.
Right.
Well, maybe that doesn't work for them. Maybe it affects their production. That's fine. We say we can give you something in a nice two, and
Yeah.
I mean that's a joke, but I mean it's real. It's
Yeah,
truthful.
yeah.
We can look at something else. If you give one problem to 8 electrical engineers, you can get 8 different answers on
Yeah.
how to fix it.
Yeah, yeah, and we can get these things lowered. We can't necessarily get rid of all of them, but it'd be sure be a shame in your facility if you didn't try. If you didn't at least try, because number one, it makes your facility safer, but number two, it makes your maintenance and service people happier too, because they're wearing less restrictive PPE all the time, which is important in a lot of cases. A lot of times we run up against people and they'll say, well, you don't have to do this mitigation. It's not required in 70. It's not required by IEEE 1584. And no, it's not. Tell you what requires it: common sense. OSHA requires you to do hazard assessments. Your next step is to mitigate those hazards every chance you get. PPE is the last line of defense. All safety people are trained this from day one. It's the last line of defense, not the first line of defense. So labels are useless to just wear PPE if that's your goal. Your goal has to be to mitigate those hazards, and it doesn't matter if 70 doesn't require it. Doesn't matter if IEEE doesn't require it. Common sense requires it. OSHA procedures require it. When you find a hazard, your first step is trying to get rid of that hazard. Period. End of story.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a pretty good overall discussion on the importance of mitigations, why it's not just about labeling, and that when you're really looking out there for a company to help you with your arc flash study, I mean, demand that you get mitigation.
Yeah, it's something I'm really passionate about. So don't ever let somebody say, "Hey, we'll send you some labels," and you're done. It's you got to make your plant safe.
Absolutely. All right, well, I think that about covers that for today. And once again, we want to thank you for joining us here on the Workplace Safety Show, and we'll catch up with you real soon.